Hey guys, this is Richard Ehrlich. Welcome back to another episode of Rich and the Bull. I'm here with my good buddy, as always, Nick Fortune, commonly referred to as the Bull. We're here to help you guys think like the rich and sort out the bull so you can make smart and sound financial decisions. Today's episode is going to be on the best way to hold title to real estate. You know, Nick, I got to tell you, talking to people, investors all over the country, I know real estate's a great opportunity depending on how you use it. People always ask, what's the best way to hold title to real estate?
Yeah, and the answer really depends on what it is that you're doing, right? There's different structures and different strategies depending on, are you going to hold properties? Are you going to flip properties? Are you doing assignments or subject to or wholesaling or anything out there? But I can tell you that the tax code is vastly different depending on what kind of structure that you set up based on what kind of investment that you're going in there. So the problem that we run into with people prior to coming to us is that they will get educated by someone that only does one thing, right? So if somebody just knows how to set up LLCs, they'll tell everybody you need an LLC. And if they set up S Corps, they'll say S Corps and C Corps and partnerships, and it's all the same. The answer is to understand what it is that you're doing with the way that structures work, and then based on that, creating the structure that is tailor-made for you. So, for example, if you have two types of income, you have passive income and you have active income. So what's the difference? Active income is immediate income, things that you do like working, right? Mm-hmm. So if you flip a property, that's an example of active income. Or if you're doing subject to, if you're doing wholesaling, if you're doing assignments on property, those are all different types of active income. The best way to take active income is in an S Corp if you are a real estate investor, or an LLC with an S election. What that does is it tells the IRS that you get to take a small part of that money, reasonable part of that money as income, and the difference you get to take as something called distributions. Mm-hmm. Well, the beautiful thing in our tax code about distributions are not subject to self-employment tax. So that's going to put an extra 15.3% you get in to put in your pocket.
That's a lot of money.
Just by being proactive and setting up an entity.
What do you see as like if you had to say the most common mistake you see about how people hold real estate?
Well, so one of the biggest things is that they are holding it inside of the wrong type of entity.
So they're missing all these tax breaks, basically, right?
Or another thing that I see when people do structures is that they stick more than one property inside of an entity. And people will say, well, it's based on the equity, or it goes off your risk or whatever. That's not the issue. The issue is, let's just say you had 5 properties and you stuck them all into one entity. Anything that happens with one tenant spills over to all the other tenants. And a good litigator today will say, hey, you know what, Your Honor, Richard is my client and he's been injured and we don't want to go chase Nick down. So what we ought to do is let's take all the rents and let's stick it into an escrow account with the court. And while we're figuring this out for the next 18 months, Richard will put that money into, and that way, when we win, we don't have to chase Richard. And if Richard wins, then you know what? He can just go get his money back.
Ouch.
Well, meanwhile, what are you doing?
You just basically interrupted the whole business, right?
Right, and you're having to pay the rents, right?
Wow.
So you have to pay the mortgages while you're not having the rents to offset that expenditure. And so what do? You will fall into a settlement. You get squeezed into taking a deal, and everybody knows out there now that you're a payer. And guys, this is not the way to go about it. If you've got passive income, you want to set up an entity so that you have that protection. In Nevada, you have something called charging order. Charging order is a powerful tool, and what charging order says with corporations and with LLCs in the state of Nevada is that when you go ahead and take that property and you put it in, if there was an issue to it, that the only remedy is not to get a lien or a garnishment or a judgment. The only way you can get that money is if in the year you're sued, you go and sell off membership certificates, or the ownership of your entity. Well, what happens if somebody doesn't do that? Let's just say I sued you for $250,000, okay? I win, I get this fancy IOU, okay? I can't do anything, it's with an IOU, it's registered with the clerk of courts. The clerk of courts contacts the IRS, and the IRS says, hey, Nick, you owe us tax on $250,000. I go, wait a minute, Richard never sold off his entity. There wasn't anything for me to get. The IRS says, that's too bad, Nick. You should have thought of that before you sued a Nevada entity that now falls in the IRS tax code of phantom income. You now owe us a check for 35% or $89,500 in money you probably will never receive. How fast does that go away?
You know, I'm seeing a very similar theme on our show, right? I go back and I talk about, you know, when do we want to know this information, right? And it's always, we want to know information that's going to be impactful and important to us before we make an investment. And you guys are to be commended, because guess what? This show, Rich and the Bull, is about being proactive. It's about having a checklist. It's about having the questions and answers to talk to people like Nick and say, hey, what do we do before we do this? How do we protect ourselves? And not going to just like like one of these chop shops, but getting customized solutions. So that's really what this show is about. And if you can do those things, you guys are smart. You're going to make smart decisions.
Yeah, and when you talk about misnomers, people keep hearing all these rah-rah guru guys go out there and they're talking about the next shiny little thing, right? You know, go over to Wyoming, you know, go over to Delaware, go to this, go to that. Guys, the lion's share of your publicly traded companies, they set up in Delaware, because Delaware as a corporation is very good at protecting its shareholders and officers, but they hold their assets not in Wyoming, not in Delaware, not in Alaska, not in New Mexico, not in they hold their assets in Nevada. It's the only state that does not share information with the IRS, unlike Wyoming and Delaware. There's no state income tax. It's the place where a person that lives out of state, or even a foreigner out of country, can hold assets from a different country, from a different state, in the state of Nevada, and have the same rights as somebody living there. So it's the power of knowledge to know these things and to implement them in your structure, and stop being fooled by people that have never walked in the courtroom, that have never defended their structures, talking about things like they're the gospel, when it's really not the way that those things work.
I'll tell you, to me, it's so refreshing to know that there are ways that you can do things in a proper way. And the idea here, guys, is to make your lives better, to have more financial freedom. And guess what? If you just make some smart decisions along the way, avoid those big headaches, a lot of great things can happen, and all the goals and all the objectives and the way you want to live your life are going to come to fruition. And that's really exciting. That's what Rich and the Bull is all about.
Yeah, and guys, don't keep us a secret. You need to like us and follow us on Facebook. You need to subscribe to our new YouTube channel. Like, share, and comment on our videos. Tell us, what is it that you like, what is it that you don't like? I know there are topics out there that you all would like to hear about, and we want to hear about those topics from you. You bring us those topics, and we'll present them in a way that we can educate you specifically. So stay tuned for our next episode. Remember, take the financial bulls by the horn. Don't mess with the bull, but do share our information, and we look forward to seeing you on our very next episode. Thank you.